Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined this week by Jennifer Fumiko-Cahill, Arts and Features Editor of the North Coast Journal. Welcome, Jen.
How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm a little psyched. It is now officially summer, now that we hit Solstice Day about yesterday. Wow, it's all a blur. But yeah, summer's here finally.
Yeah, it's officially summer, although I think once it hits like 66 degrees, people in Humboldt break out the half shirts and call it summer.
I thought you were going to say melt from the heat, but yeah.
That's when it hits 67.
Okay, there you go. That's the threshold. But yeah, I think it really did get a little bit over that. It was quite beautiful. Speaking of quite beautiful, segue, what is on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Okay, once again, we have an alarming amount of good news.
Nice.
Buckle up. So this week, the wonderful Kim Ware has a cover story about Pregonesh, which is the Yurok word for the California condor. And the California condor, it's back, baby. Not 100% to where it should be, of course, but the few that they have been kind of caring for in captivity and preparing to release are ready to fly. And it's a baby step process. It's a little bit anticlimactic if you were hoping that they would suddenly be free, like doves at a wedding. But, and I don't do that with doves. They don't. Anyway, but the Yurok tribe has put together this incredible program, and it's really fascinating. And Kim has been following this story for a while, and she occasionally refers to these birds like she's been watching the Condor cam on and off. And so they have these birds that are like A3, A0, and A2. And, they're number tagged. So when they spread their wings in the pictures, you'll see the tag with the number on it. And she's been sort of following their progress. And there was a period where one of them flew off, and it's described in the story. They have these trackers on them, so they know where they are. And they're learning a lot about them and their behaviors in the process, but they know where they are. And, the birds have to learn to fly free. And this one was out of contact for a couple of weeks. And Kim was like, you guys, A2 still isn't home. We were dying. But yeah, it's a fascinating story. And it's one of those really good stories where you see how putting in the effort to help someone or something else helps you. And this woman who is, one of the leads of the project, her name is Williams-Clausen, and she is, Tiana Williams-Clausen. She's the Yurok Tribe Wildlife Department Director. And she talks about how she came back from, getting a degree at Harvard and came back immediately to do something that would, to work with the tribe. And when she started working on this program, she knew it was important, but she didn't realize how important it would be. And she talked about witnessing the first day, the first condor flying in the sky over Yurok country in 100 years. It's astounding. It's a historic moment. And it's, it's that fixing the world ethos. And, she's making it happen, and with the rest of this incredible team. And Kim talks to a bunch of people from the team and talks about how this, the meshing of environmental and, species protection and tribal practice and preserving of tradition, because the condor is also really important in tribal culture and Yurok culture. And it's really a great kind kind of convergence of a lot of different issues and different causes, things that are really worth working toward. And here they are all working in confluence together, and birds
Yeah,
making a comeback.
I thought it was really neat that in the article it says there hasn't been one seen in the wild here on the North Coast since 1892, and the species got protected as endangered, but then there was down to like only 22 known to live in the wild total, and that's by like around 1960 something.
Yeah, I can remember as a kid hearing about the California condor and thinking, well, that's hopeless. It's done.
Yep, yep.
And that was the tone with which people talked about it. They were like, oh, isn't this terrible what we've done? So sad. And next up. But, they've done this incredible thing. And one of the cool things about it is, how do you get an animal that has lived in captivity to figure out how to live in the wild? And that is, you get them a big brother, big sister mentor.
It's so cool.
So they brought this other condor in to like teach the youngins how to behave. And it takes like, what was it, 6 or 7 years for a condor to mature.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just kick them out of the nest and then they're on their own after a season. It's one of the reasons it's so hard for them to rebound, right? Is that the parents have to be caring for them for so long, and they're vulnerable for a while. But they like have this older, really with it condor who is showing them how to do all these behaviors, everything from social behaviors to feeding, how to get the really good parts of a carcass.
Condor fun.
Yeah, and Kim actually described to me once what it looks like, and she said it was like the episode of Friends where Monica puts her head in the turkey. That the condors really like get up in there and put their whole torso into a carcass, and it's both amazing and a little hard to watch.
It's pretty wild. The article says that they have a purpose in the ecosystem as sort of an apex kind of carnivore, like maybe not a hunter but a scavenger, that they'll eat anything. So whether it's like an elk or whether it's a whale, they're here to eat what's around. So you can imagine that they serve a really useful function, and it explains part of the reason why, plus the fact that they soar so high in the sky, why they have are held in such high esteem in tribal custom.
Yeah, they are just here batting cleanup for nature.
Yeah.
So that you don't have large carcasses just rotting out in the wilds.
One of the really neat things in the article that Kim describes is the response from sort of the protagonist of the story, who's the expert, the wildlife expert, and also the tribe that got to experience, other tribal members who got to experience a session where there was singing and a ceremony. Can you tell us a little bit about that connection and that experience?
Yeah, one of the things, something that I really liked when I was reading is Yurok Tribal Chair Joseph James was talking about the project, and like I was saying, it's so many elements coming together. And what he said was he described it as a real life manifestation of our cultural commitment to restore and protect the planet for future generations. And meanwhile, Williams-Clausen was talking about how she thinks about this as, we're doing this for the elders, right? This is for the elders. And so it's really one generation looking to help another. And at one point when they, the first birds took off, there was singing, and it was like a really beautiful sacred moment for people. And they were, the birds were sort of interestingly like responding, like spreading their wings and, turning toward the singers. And she was saying that, Williams-Clausen was saying like, okay, I know, as in terms of like biology, that they could have just been stretching or whatever, but it really felt like they were responding, and, that they were having a moment. And it's just really beautiful.
That's awesome. It was so awesome. It was really touching. And so another element of the story that I thought was great was it talks about like not getting your expectations too high, because it's a very long process and there are a lot of obstacles, hurdles, potential pitfalls. Not to go cut to the chase and be a spoiler and bring down the high moment here, but can you tell a little bit about some of the pitfalls that they're anticipating?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that they've worked on, like trying to educate local hunters about lead-free ammunition and other things. Like, they've had to test potential contaminants in the marine life and other things that they might be feeding on. There are a million things trying to kill the California condor, including every bit of encroachment that humans do on their territory, on the range they need. But their growth is going to be slow. And, like I said, it takes years for them to mature. So you're not going to have to shoo them away from your dumpster anytime soon. But they are, they're flourishing so far, and it really does make everybody hopeful about the prospect of more. There are other programs dotted around California, but I think this one is really unique. And it seems like this is the beginning of a long, probably difficult, but fruitful journey.
Right on. I saw them, a bunch of them soaring in Pinnacles, which is a really small national park nearby to here. So this is exciting. I look forward to that day when we can actually out on the trails and in the hills, we can see them. Any last thoughts? One thing I'll mention, not to put you on the spot, is that you can find out more information at www.yuroktribe.org. And then it's Yurok-Condor-Restoration-program. I bet if you search for that, you'll find some variation of that. But so there's more information available out there. Also, of course, Kim's article. But anything else you want to add, Jen, at this point about the story?
Check out the feed, check out the photos of the birds. You really can't imagine their scale until you see it. And it's beautiful to see. It's making me like nature, and I'm uncomfortable.
Well, this is a good sign. It's got to do with the balance in the universe near the solstice, and I know that's so new agey. You hate it. I just I hit you in that spot, the reaction spot. So let's pivot if you'd like. Is there anything else you want to mention at all from this week's article? Sorry, this week's edition. Before we go over to your arts and features beat.
Well, there is a story Thad has in here, a news piece that is more grand jury stuff. No, it is not about our auditor controller story. That bomb already dropped. But the grand jury has other stuff that they write about, including elder abuse, including the efforts to have more equity in schools in regards to Indigenous kids, and how that progress is going. And so their reports have been released, and it's hard to sell a grand jury report. You know what I mean? It's like, read this study. But in fact, grand jury reports are kind of great. They are average people, average citizens who sign up to do this, and they have presented this information in a digestible form. And so you take these, big problems that we have, like the county jail and things like that, and they study it and distill it down into a paper that they release. And then you can kind of read it and get a handle on what's happening, what the status and what the recommendations are for moving forward on actual problems. It's a solution-based report. And it is looking at progress, and it is looking at, it's a forward-looking thing to see where we are and where we can go from here. So, insofar as you want to have a real handle on the health of this county, grand jury reports are great. And I strongly urge you to go through and read it. It's good stuff. And also that always makes everything easily understandable. Thank God.
Yeah, right. No, right on. You're speaking my language. Whether between solutions journalism, figuring out the community, a path for progress, and a vision, and then Thad's clarity. I'm just gonna. I haven't even read it, but I'm going to endorse it because I think it's probably really great reading.
It's one of those times where you think to yourself, like, oh, well, people have a lot of distrust about studies and governments and what everyone's angle is and whose vested interests are being represented in when data comes out or when, a report comes out. But the grand jury report is really, the people's report. And I think it's absolutely worth, you're paying for it. You might as well read it.
There you go. Well, cool. Thanks for that plug for Thad's story. Let's pivot over to your beat. What is going on in the arts and features beat this week?
So much. I am going to try and give you a rundown because this is a great issue. Let's start with weekly columns. For one thing, if you have people who are mushroom hunters in your life, congratulations. Holy grail of Humboldt living. Wendy Chan has a really fantastic recipe for stuffed morels. Morels being those, do you know which ones they are, David? Mm-hmm. They're the little wrinkly ones.
The delicious ones.
Delicious, wrinkly morels. And she points out that the Chinese name for them is lamb stomach or lamb intestine. And I can see why, but not the most attractive name, China. Reconsider. Yeah. So anyway, the morel, which is probably like Latin for lamb intestine. Anyway, is stuffed with pork and shrimp and steamed. And it's a lovely recipe. And even if you are not a person who is eating pork and shrimp, this recipe, the method works very well. So if you have a favorite dumpling stuffing, like a vegetarian one or something, you can absolutely use it. Likewise, if you have a different mushroom that you want to use, you can translate this recipe over and use it in a different shaped mushroom. And, you have to sort of get creative with how you're going to stuff it. But it basically is about making a stuffing, putting it aside and letting it meld, and then cleaning and cutting the mushrooms so that you can stuff, and then steaming them on a plate in a pot so that the juices that end up on the plate, the steaming plate, become part of a sort of a silky sauce that goes on top. And that is the part that is going to be so useful to you in your life, even if you don't use every exact ingredient in this recipe. That method is really great. And I have tasted the mushroom, and it is delightful.
Right on.
And we also have this week another gamer for us. Colin Yo's set list is a particularly happy one this week because all kinds of things are happening. Among them, Oysterfest things.
Right.
Remember Oysterfest?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not happening on the plaza, but he does list some cool bands that are going to be playing in the Creamery District. What they are doing is they have this big top tent that's out by the Creamery building, and there's going to be bands and food and stuff like that. But there's also going to be food and music and whatnot all over town. So restaurants are going to be having specials. Not all of them are 100% set yet, so I'm waiting to hear the final plans on what each place is serving. But most of the restaurants in the Arcata area, you can look at the map on the Arcata Main Street website, and it'll show you who's participating. And there'll be, like I said, bands, music, etc. They're going to have one event on Friday night and then sort of an all-day thing on Saturday from noon to 4. And that'll be like a mini Oysterfest happening in the Creamery District with bands all day and whatnot. Someday we may get back to a giant, stumbling, sunburned,
free-for-all.
Spilling your beer on the plaza. We're not there yet, but live in hope.
I'm just happy we didn't miss it. I thought I missed it this weekend because it was, around the holiday weekend, so right. Often in the past. But as soon as you mentioned it, I realized it's this weekend, which is great. We didn't miss it.
Right. It used to be like Oysterfest and then Trinidad Fish Fest. Right. And you'd never really get your sea legs back for another couple weeks. But
yeah.
Someday we will get back to having the awkward moment of spilling a beer on someone who turns out to be your ex on the plaza. But not yet. But he's got a lot of really great gigs and some suggestions for like a movie night. And it is hilarious to me because he has an enthusiasm. Colin has an enthusiasm for he can write as intensely and as admiringly about Chopin as he can about RoboCop. And this week he's singing the praises of the movie RoboCop, which is playing at the ATL, the Arcata Theater Lounge. And I always enjoy it. I enjoy whenever he gets excited about something. And when he is excited about something, you would be wise to go and check it out. It is a busy week
Yeah.
because I have more. Are you ready?
There's more. Wait, there's more.
There is absolutely more. Louisa Rogers. Louisa Rogers is talking about the Lamphere Dunes tours that the Friends of the Dunes do. And I haven't been on one of these, but they're really cool. They're not just a tour that tells you about, of course, the ecosystem, of course, the plants, fauna, flora, all of it. But they also talked about the Lampheres, the folks after which they're named. And they're this eccentric couple that lived right there on the dunes. And she got all kinds of cool stories about them. And way back when, apparently, also, they did not need a refrigerator because it never got warm enough to need a refrigerator. Global warming is very weak.
Yeah.
But she has all these kind of cool stories about it. And if you can manage a couple of steep climbs, the rest of it is pretty easy. But it's a great tour. And that is another fantastic thing you can be doing. We have all kinds of suggestions about how to spend your time. When are you going to have time to like go to your job? You need to pick mushrooms. You need to tour the dunes. You're going to Oyster Fest. Going to see RoboCop.
And more.
And more. What else did I have? I have more. Oh, so this thing is over, but Lindsay Lacewell-Kessner also has a great write-up about the Outer Ruminations, the second annual event where people do all these fantastic art installations out on the bluff in Lolita. And it's this big rolling property, and it's private property, and all these artists come and do installations for which they're paid. Synopsis, the Ink people, and I believe it's a McLean grant have put it together so that artists are actually paid for their work, which is wonderful. And she has a really great description. You know how sometimes you come to an installation piece, and I don't have a lot of art training. Yeah. I don't always know how to talk about what I'm seeing, but Lindsay has a really great way of talking about how it feels to interact with a piece of art. And in this, she's talking about sitting on this swinging sofa outside, and about the directions. There's a place in a little note area where you are encouraged to write a love letter. And she talked about how, like, if you decide to go all in and not be cool, you can actually experience something. And it was a very cool thing to read about. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next year. So that's a great thing to check out.
So annual event seems pretty cool. Hopefully we'll be able to get a heads up so we can experience it next year. Yes. Outer Ruminations, it's called Outer Ruminations.
Outer Ruminations.
That was pretty neat. We have minimal time left. I just want to mention you have this really great flow chart about people who want to make it's hard. I can't wrap my head around how to describe it. I need you to describe it.
It is a flow chart to help you come up with reasons for mass shootings that aren't guns.
Right.
Yes. And if you look at some of the conversations around gun legislations, you hear lots of people saying, well, it's really mental health, or, well, the schools really need to be fortified. And this is kind of playing on that idea. And I should give a shout out to our production department, which I almost killed all of them by handing them this giant pile of massive ideas. And this time it was Dave in production who had to wrestle it into a manageable thing. But it is no easy task taking my thoughts and organizing them by color on a page.
That alone is reason enough to check it out because it's really cool. Thank you out there to Dave. Jen, thanks. This was awesome. I appreciate you holding down the fort on behalf of yourself and Thad. That's all the time we have this week, unfortunately.
Well, we'll be here next week.
That's right. We will. Well, great. I'm looking forward to that. North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up. Stay informed. Also available 24/7 online, so you can check them out anytime. Everybody out there, take care until we connect again next week.